Continuing on in Colossians chapter 3, verse 9, Paul says, "Do not lie to one another, since you laid aside the old self with its practices." Since you laid aside the old self with its practices. Again, we're looking at something that he's saying past tense. Since you laid aside the old self with its practices. In other words, this is the old self that was crucified. It's the I of Galatians 2:20. I have been crucified with Christ. I no longer live. Since then you have laid, do not lie to one another, since you laid aside the old self with its evil practices. That old self, that root, that old tree, that Adamic nature was laid aside. It was co-crucified with Christ. And when the tree went, so did the evil practices, the fruit that came as a result of the root. Since you have laid aside the old self, again, past tense, and have put on. This is present tense. This is has been done. Present tense, and have put on the new self. The new self. It's the life I live in the body now. That is the new self. The life I live in the body, I live by the faith of the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. This is the new self, which is Christ in you. It's not a separate self. It's not a false self, if you will. The new self is Christ in you. Ego, am now Christ in me. That's who you are now. If you see yourself, if we see ourselves apart from Christ, we're living in the false self. We're perceiving according to the false self, which is separation, a separated self, if you will. It's a lie. It's a phantom, you can say. But we are now Christ in us. That's who we are. And we have put on the new self, which is Christ. In other words, we're clothed with him. He has brought us into him, and he is in us, and we are in him. He is in us. We are in the Father. There's such a oneness, for he that is joined to the Lord is one spirit with him. You're one spirit with him. The branch and the vine are one. It's one tree. It's Christ, and expressing himself as himself through you, as you in the earth, demonstrating who he is. He said to his disciples who asked him, "Lord, show us the Father. Show us the Father." And he says, "How long have I been with you guys?" It's just like it's the Father's talking right now. How long have I been with you? When you have seen me, you have seen the Father. I and the Father are one. So I and the Father are one. You and the Father, and you and Jesus and the Spirit are one. You and as he was in the earth, so are you. I'm reminded of Bobby Conner once referring to one of the worship songs that we all have sung and still do sing, and it's like and we understand that God is the head, and there is no other head other than him. Yet we are connected to the head. We are his body. We're one. But the worship song where it sings, "There is no one like you in all the earth." Well, that actually, Bobby Conner says he felt like that grieved the Holy Spirit when we sang that song. Why? Because what has the Holy Spirit been doing in the earth all these years, thousands of years? He's been working in us both to will and to do, to express who he is in you and through you, to bring forth the manifestation of the sons of God, to reveal to the earth that you are like him already. You know, God created us in him, created to be like God. The new self is created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness. You are like God already. Don't eat of that fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, like they were deceived to do by the deceiver himself, to try to be like God when they were already created to be like him. He says, "Let us make man in our image, in our likeness," bearing the very likeness of God on the earth. You are his workmanship. I am his workmanship, created to be like God in true righteousness and true holiness. It's true because it's not something you try to create, or you try to make of yourself holy. You try to make yourself holy. That's a false holiness. You try to make yourself righteousness. That's a self-righteousness. It has no origin in God or is of God, but it's of the flesh. It's not true. It's false. Trying to be like God, it's religious. You have already been created to be like him in true righteousness and holiness. The new self is Christ in you. It bears the image of him in its uniqueness. Every single individual part has a uniqueness. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. You and me, Christ in us, has that unique, distinct expression of him. It is him expressing himself through the unique branch.